I'm Julie Zenner along with Dennis Anderson, and here's what's coming up on Almanac North.
An acute child care shortage in the region is impacting parents and businesses. New research released this week could hold some keys to reversing that problem. Wisconsin Congressman Sean Duffy stopped by the studio this week while on the campaign trail. And the remarkable reinvention of Duluth's Lincoln Park continues. We'll have a video report.
These stories and the business news coming up on Almanac North. Hello and welcome to Almanac North. Thanks for watching. And Denny, we've got some interesting topics on tonight's program.
In fact, our first topic tonight has an effect on a lot of people across the Northland.
It does. So let's bring in our first guest.
All right. Thank you very much, Julie, and welcome everyone. Parents with young children know very well how difficult it is to find qualified child care in northeastern Minnesota. Well, that difficulty was quantified in a report first released at Giants Ridge this week. That report also has suggestions how the region can begin to address the child care shortage. Here to tell us more is Tony Sertich, president of the Northland Foundation, and Sonja Merrild is director of grants with the Grand Rapids-based Blandin Foundation. Thank you both for being here tonight. Tony, why did the Northland Foundation contract for this study in the first place?
Well, we're hearing all over about this quiet crisis, which is much louder now, about child care. And originally you hear from families and schools, but now we're hearing from businesses and economic developers and city council people about how this is going to impact the future of our region.
Mm-hmm. So how critical would you say the situation is across the region, and is it different in different parts of the Northland?
Yeah, so the Northland, it stretches between, the two foundations here located in Duluth and Grand Rapids. So I would say it's a critical issue across the Northland. But of course, the farther out you get from some of the job centers, I'd say the worse it gets.
Mm-hmm. What has the study revealed in terms maybe of why there's such a critical shortage of child care?
It's a whole host of things, and it's not just a crisis in northeastern Minnesota, though we're ranked #1 in the state in a statistic you don't want to be ranked #1 in. We have the least amount of child care. Some of the reasons why are some of the providers are aging out and leaving. Regulation can be an issue for some folks. There's a whole host of issues on the whys, but and the cost is really a big challenge for families. The cost today for an infant for child care averages at about $10,000 a year, which is the cost of tuition. And when you think about tuition, families sometimes save up for 18 years to afford it. Well, when the child is born, these families are under critical pressure to pay that.
Mm-hmm. You piqued my interest on something. It almost sounds like some child care providers have felt that there's too much regulation, too many laws.
Some people have said that, and certainly this is a well-regulated industry because they're dealing with our most precious resource. Sure. That's one aspect of it, but there are many aspects of this challenge.
Mm-hmm. Sonja, let's talk about some of the effects of the child care shortage in our region. What are you seeing or hearing across the region from people that you talk with?
Right. I think there really was a time when families saw this primarily as just a family issue. Mm-hmm. But I think we're seeing that with the lack of care, employers are seeing that it's harder for families to, when they can't find the reliable care, to be reliable workers. And as the study showed, employers across the region are seeing some verifiable losses from families who can't find care and therefore are not able to show up to work or even find work. And so we also know when we understand how rural communities work that when children are well cared for and when families can relax and go to work every day and their children are taken care of, that we know communities are stronger for it too. Mm-hmm. And we also know that when children have access to and families have access to quality care, that kids do better in school. And We know that when families and employers and schools do better, whole local economies do better. So,
were there any surprises that popped up in this study?
Well, I think the most important thing that I learned in the study, there are really three of them. Number one, that there's no silver bullet to this. It's going to take all sectors of our economy to step up because all sectors are impacted. As Sonja said, businesses, they quantify that there's an average loss of $5,000 per employee for a business for an employee who doesn't have child care. So there's no silver bullet. We need everybody at the table. Second is there's no one-size solution that fits. These fits are going to have to be for every community. It's going to look a little different. And so those are probably the main two things that I saw from the study moving forward.
Is there also an aspect where the lack of affordable childcare is keeping families in our region in poverty because they can't go out and get work?
Absolutely. There's lost wages of, I believe, about $8 million a year to our regional economy because families are going to have to make different choices. And we're also seeing, the mantra in northeastern Minnesota has always been jobs, jobs, jobs. And with changing demographics now, workers are going to be able to choose where they live, not just in our region, in the state, in the world. And if you don't have affordable and quality childcare in your region, people are going to choose not to move home or not to move to our region and are going to have to leave and go somewhere else. So it's an economic development, it's a community development, it's a quality of life issue.
And so many different parts of the Northland must be feeling this maybe more so than the urban areas.
yeah, I think like we alluded to before, it's almost as the more rural you are, the more prescient the problem really is. But I also think we need to emphasize, and this was also outlined in the study, that there are a variety of solutions that are being presented by communities. And I think that's some of the stuff that the Blandin Foundation sees and cares a lot about, is that we have a whole host of rural leaders who've been working on this issue for a while. And they really are coming up with some workable solutions across sectors, so that, as an example, nonprofits are standing up and taking on the issue, or private businesses are creating co-ops. Governments or localities are putting up buildings that for a low rent for a provider wishing to expand. So again, as Tony alluded to, each community is very different, and each community has a series of assets that people are coming together and putting to use.
And the Northland Foundation itself has been working to provide training and incentives and scholarships, things like that, over the years. Talk a little bit about your work with those early childhood years.
Sure. So we're trying to be a hub for this issue. Currently, we are the provider of early learning scholarships. The state has scholarship money for families, low-income families, to afford childcare, and so we administer those scholarships for the state of Minnesota. Secondly, we provide a whole host of trainings because, as we said, this is an industry that you need a lot of training. Training is demanded of you, and so we provide that training and appreciation events all across our region. And third, we were fortunate enough to get some grants from the State Department of Economic Development to provide funding to child care facilities to expand the number of places that they could provide child care.
How was the study conducted, and what specifically were you trying to get at?
So I think back to a forum that we actually were both at a little over a year ago, where we recognized that the problem was really coming to the fore. There were a lot of economic developers and business owners in the room. And there was a sentiment that there had been a lot of focus on what is the cost to the region of providing this care. And what we wanted to get to the bottom of the study is what would some of the benefits be if we in fact began to tackle these problems, and real tangible benefits with tax revenues back to the state, new businesses started, the potential to get more of our workforce back out working, and so these are some of the things that the study shed some light on.
It sounds like
really the returns.
It sounds like public and private enterprise must be involved together on this to solve this issue.
It's going to take everybody at the table. The philanthropic community is not going to solve it. Government's not going to solve it by itself. Private sector. It's going to take folks from every sector to be involved. And what this study really shows is there is a benefit. So no matter where you're sitting in northeastern Minnesota today, you have an aspect, your life is affected by this crisis. Even if you don't have kids, even if you're a retiree, the future of our region depends upon our youngest having this ability and young families having access to childcare. So if our future depends on it, we have to invest in our future no matter who you are in northeastern Minnesota.
How is Minnesota doing as you look around the country in terms of how it's addressing child care for families? Is it on the leading edge? Does it have a long ways to go?
You know, this is not something that was outlined in the study in particular. I think, you know, Minnesota is probably somewhere in the middle. But what we do know is that Minnesota is taking a lot of steps right now to try to fix this problem, and especially in rural areas. And I think what's encouraging, and across the Northland, we have leaders in rural communities who we see standing up and trying to solve these issues every day, evidenced by the large group of people who came forth yesterday also to see the results of the study.
Yeah, we had 120 people in the room, and they crossed all sectors. We had providers there, we had elected officials, we had business people in the room, because they all know that they share in the responsibility moving forward.
So what's the value of having the hard data on child care in our region? What are you going to do with that information moving forward?
Well, we know it's a crisis. We hear about it. Now we can quantify to say we need 4,500 slots, is what they call them, places for children. We know the cost, and the sticker shock is huge. It's somewhere between $900,000 to almost $2 million to solve this problem at homes, or up to $10 million for centers. So we know what the cost is. But as Sonja said, we know what the economic benefits are. So there's a return on investment. So folks from any sector can say, if we invest in this, however best to invest in our community, we're going to have a return on this investment, and it's going to be great for our communities and great for our future.
This issue is not going to die, that's for sure. Sonja, we've got to run. Sonja, Merrill, Tony Sertich, thank you very much. Appreciate your conversation.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Voters in northwestern Wisconsin have some important decisions to make at the voting booth on November 6th.
And one of those decisions is for the 7th District Congressional seat, where Republican Sean Duffy is being challenged by Democrat Margaret Engebretson. We talked with Engebretson last month on Almanac North. Representative Duffy stopped by the studio this week while campaigning in Superior, and Julie sat down to talk with him.
Congressman Sean Duffy joins us. Congressman, thank you so much for making time in your busy schedule as you head toward the midterms.
It's good to be with you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, why don't we get right into it? Tell us a little bit about yourself and why you think that voters in Wisconsin should return you to Congress.
Yeah, so Sean Duffy, born and raised in Hayward, Wisconsin, the 10th of 11 kids. Married to my wife for almost 20 years. We have 8 kids. My oldest just went to college. My youngest is 2. I've been a prosecutor in Ashland for 10, I was there for 10 years, and now I've been in the Congress for 8. And in essence, I've been fighting to make sure we have an economy that's growing with more opportunity, better wages, more jobs. And if you look at the tax reform that we've implemented, letting people keep more of their own money, streamlining rules and regulations. That doesn't mean no rules or no regulation, but making sure they're functional for small businesses has allowed this economy to explode. In Wisconsin, for hourly workers, wages have almost increased by 5% in the last year. So this is actually working, and when people go to work, I think they appreciate the Congress who helps make that happen for them.
Now, of course, the first half of President Trump's term has been marked by what many would consider a pretty toxic political environment. How would you describe the president's leadership style and or his effectiveness as a leader?
Listen, if you look back to the 8 years prior, we had lackluster growth. If someone lost their job, they were afraid they couldn't get another job. They were afraid they might lose their house. Right now, you see that this economy is exploding. If someone's child now graduates from college, they can get a job. They don't move back in your basement. It's a really good thing. So the policies have actually been working. So someone might say, I don't like and I can agree, sometimes I don't like all the tweets. I don't like every comment from the president. But if you look at the policies that the president has been advocating for, they've been working, even renegotiating trade deals. This is a blue collar recovery. People that put boots on every day are going back to work with better wages. And I'm in Wisconsin, but if you look at what's happening on the Iron Range, they love President Trump. I was just at a factory, a welder a couple days ago who was saying, I've been a Democrat my whole life, but President Trump's fighting for me in my job, and I voted for him in 2016, and I'm not going to end because of the success of the policies.
Mm-hmm. Let's talk about the federal debt, approaching $22 trillion right now. Republicans passed a massive spending bill this year that is expected to have trillion-dollar-plus deficits at some point. Have Republicans lost their way in terms of fiscal responsibility?
So no. If Republicans were able to pass that bill by themselves, we would have spent far less. But we're stuck, even though we have the House is Republican and the Senate's Republican. There's this filibuster rule, so you need 60 votes to pass any bill in the Senate. And that means Democrats in the Senate can say, no, we're not going to vote for this unless you spend more money. And that's actually what happened. So they were able to drive up spending to get a deal so the government didn't shut down. If Republicans did this on their own, we would have been able to curb spending. But you're right, the debt is too high. And my view is you don't necessarily have to slash and burn spending. All you have to do is cap spending. Don't let the spending grow. And so as your economy right now is growing at 3 to 4%, as your economy grows and your spending maintains, that's how you get our debt right-sided. But it's hard to stop the federal government from spending more money.
Mm-hmm. Healthcare, major concern for people in Wisconsin and across the country. Your opponent supports Medicare for all. What do you think needs to be done?
Medicare is made for our seniors. I want to make sure I preserve Medicare for our senior citizens who've paid into that program. It's already doesn't have enough money in it. We got to shore it up. Why would you make it less stable than it is today? I support making sure seniors have Medicare for them, for their retirements. Here's what we have to do. I believe in a system where you have families are able to pick and choose plans that work for them. I want doctors, hospitals, clinics, insurance companies to all compete for your business. But the politics are very divisive in this space. Visions are different. And so what I think we need to do is say, listen, let's give it back to the states. If California wants to have a single payer system, Minnesota wants to have a single payer system, great. But if Wisconsin wants a more free enterprise system, or Oklahoma wants a different system, let the states figure out what works best for them. And in the end, after 5-10 years, we'll see which state offers the best health care at the best price. I think that's the way we can move forward and get liberals and conservatives to agree on a pathway forward. Because right now, everyone's going in different directions, and healthcare is not working for American families.
Do you think any solution, even at the state level, needs to preserve protections for those with pre-existing conditions?
I do. So listen, every family has a family member with a pre-existing condition. So I think that should no doubt be the case. And in Wisconsin, before Obamacare, we had coverage for those with pre-existing conditions. And you want to make sure that people who have that pre-existing condition can always access health care. You don't want to exclude a group of people from pricing them out of health care. But I'll just tell you right now, a lot of promises were made in Obamacare that haven't come to pass. And prices have gone up. So really right now, health care, if you're really rich, it works for you. If you're really poor and you get a subsidy, health care works for you. But if you're in the middle, your prices have increased and you can't afford health care coverage. It's kind of like college, same kind of thing. Anyway, okay. My daughter's just going to college. I bring up college. So.
I just put 3 through, I know that.
You know you do.
As we mentioned, the country's very polarized right now. You can see that with the Kavanaugh hearings. Is there still room in Congress to reach across the aisle and work with the other parties? So
America sees the tax debate, the health care debate, and no bipartisanship. So I'm going to be honest, I work with Democrats all the time. I work with Keith Ellison. I work with Tim Walz from Minnesota. If you're going to pass a bill out of the House and pass it through the Senate, make it become law, you need to start with a Democrat in the House. So I work with Democrats on my committee all the time to get a bipartisan bill so I can get a bipartisan vote in the House, so I can get Democrats and Republicans in the Senate to vote for it, so I can get it to the president's desk. So on all kinds of bills, we actually work together. You don't hear that story. Maybe it's not that sexy, but it's happening.
Mm-hmm. Caravan, thousands of migrants headed toward the southern border right now. If and when they arrive, what do you think should be done?
If you don't have a border, I agree with President Trump. You don't have a country. You just can't have people say we're going to storm into your country without your permission or consent. And so I don't think you can incentivize caravans of people to come into the country. If this one this caravan of 7,500 today, who knows how big it's going to be when they get there. If they get to the border and we say, come on in, you're going to have caravans every month coming to America. You're going to have planes that are going to. We have to be able to say, no. We have an organized system in which we let people come in to America. We evaluate people. You just can't say, I'm going to get in a caravan and storm your country. That's not the way we should do it. And so I think we have to push back on the caravan. And I'm a believer that we need immigration reform. And I would tell you this, there's a lot of bipartisanship on how we fix this. There's not a lot of differences, and that surprises people. But from border security, give people legal status who have been here working, who haven't committed crimes. Deal with the DACA kids. Let a work visa system happen so you can bring people in. And so instead of walking, several thousand miles across these countries, let them fly into our America with a work visa. Let them fly here. It's way safer. And then we have internal enforcement like an E-Verify. And then again, you have border security. I think that's an easy way to deal with immigration reform. So if people are coming across the border unlawfully, we know they're running guns or drugs or human trafficking. But just one last point.
We're almost out of time.
I know we are.
We are out of time.
We have a drug crisis in this country and in our communities. And those drugs are coming across the southern border. It has to be secured.
All right. Congressman Sean Duffy, thank you so much for making time to visit with us.
Thanks for having me.
Appreciate it.
Appreciate it. Thanks.
This week saw more positive change and development in Duluth's Lincoln Park. The neighborhood has seen a surge in revitalization in recent years, and growth there continues. On Wednesday, a summit called Crafting Something Great was held along with the ribbon cutting of another newly opened business.
We'd like to welcome you all to the Duluth Folk School and the Dovetail Cafe, where we're about three things: handcrafting, building community, and having fun.
I love the location, and I think it's a really exciting way to kind of activate and incubate what's already happening in the neighborhood. Ready? Okay.
What's really cool about districts like this is they are very authentic, and people are making things here. There's a lot of commercial buildings that are probably, I would say, underutilized, and you've got a lot of second floor space that is probably pretty vacant that could turn into housing or creative office or studio space.
My name is Augustine Anderson, and we purchased this building. Our company is the Sparkworks. We're having a little bit of a charrette or a gathering to talk about adaptive reuse of buildings, and so this is one of those projects.
There's many people from across the city who have worked very hard in the neighborhood of Lincoln Park. That isn't just about how do we make this a cool, great place to be, but how do we make this our place? How does this become Duluth's neighborhood, that it is a place where all people can thrive, where the residents who live here continue to feel welcome and grow and sustain here.
Okay, it's time now for the business news from the folks at Business North. St. Mary's Medical Center in Duluth has earned verification as a Level 1 adult trauma center. It is the only Minnesota hospital north of the Twin Cities to receive such designation. Only 5 Level 1 trauma centers are located in Minnesota. St. Mary's Medical Center cares for about 1,600 trauma patients each year.
President Donald Trump on Wednesday signed America's Water Infrastructure Act of 2018. The legislation includes the construction of a second Poe-sized lock at Sault Ste. Marie, Michigan. The president had pledged to fix the Soo locks in April, the Lake Carriers Association said in a Thursday announcement. Duluth Seaway Port Authority Director Deb DeLuca called it really exciting that the bill has been signed and now waits for funding. The new lock is projected to cost approximately $922 million and will take 7 years to build.
Trees have been removed and site preparation is now underway in Big Fork for a new Dollar General store. The store will be located just south of the fire hall on Highway 38. The project is following the schedule suggested by a Dollar General representative last May. Late winter is now the target date for a grand opening of the store. The new place will employ between 6 and 10 people. For more on these and other stories, visit businessnorth.com.
Our time is up, but if you have a comment, be sure to dial 218-788-2849 to leave a message or send an email to almanacnorth@wdse.org. And visit the WDSE website for the latest program updates, news, and job openings at the station and special events here in the region. And Denny, have you picked out your Halloween costume yet for next week?
I'll have to use the same Dennis Anderson mask I used last year.
Dang, I was going to go as Dennis Anderson.
It's frightful.
For Denny and the crew here at WDSC, I'm Julie Zenner. Have a great weekend, everyone. We'll see you next time.